I showed up at the hotel private room, wearing a 9 yuan shirt from Temu and a pair of canvas shoes, but I saw my boyfriend, who was supposed to be struggling just like me, dressed in a top-tier suit, drinking and sneering with a group of rich second-generation heirs. Seriously, Liam, you've been with that poor girl for 7 years and you're not tired of her yet. Let me tell you, Margaret is coming back to the country soon, if you don't break it off with her. Be careful or Margaret will never pay attention to you again. Liam sneered. How could that be? I just wanted to see how long Leona would keep fawning over me. As soon as Margaret returns to the country, I'll dump her. I felt as if I had been plunged into an ice cellar. The next second, I made the call. Madam, I am willing to marry your vegetative son, Ms. Leona. Are you really sure you want to marry into my family? The noblewoman sitting opposite Leona looked at her with an eager expression. Leona's fingers tightened around her coffee cup. I've made up my mind. I'm willing. The noblewoman instantly stood up in excitement. Thank you for being willing to save my son. I'll go back and prepare right now. Don't worry. I will definitely give you a grand wedding. I won't let anyone look down on you just because my son is in a vegetative state. After saying this, the noblewoman hurriedly left the cafe. Leona also slowly stood up, picked up her faded canvas bag, and walked out. Just as she reached the door, the phone rang. Staring at the name Liam on the screen, Leona remained silent for several seconds before finally answering the call. As soon as the call connected, the man's clear, cool voice reached her ears. Leona, I'm off work now. Today is my birthday. You'll be home on time, right? Leona's palm tightened around the phone, even though she had long prepared herself mentally. Facing Liam's deception and lies still made her heart ache and go numb uncontrollably. Liam was her boyfriend of 7 years, who, like her, came from a tragic family background. Perhaps it was because they were in the same boat, but after meeting Liam during a part-time job in college, she fell uncontrollably in love with him. She regarded Liam as the salvation of her life, even resolving that she would marry no one but him. Yet just last night, in a private room at a bar, she saw her boyfriend, who usually wore 9 yuan shirts and canvas shoes from Temu, struggling alongside her as an office drone, dressed in a suit made of the finest material, arrogantly drinking and sneering with a group of rich second-generation heirs. No way, Liam. You've been with that poor girl for 7 years and you're not tired of it yet. You've been playing this game for way too long. I'm telling you, Margaret is coming back to the country soon, if you don't break it off with her. Be careful or Margaret will never pay attention to you again. Liam sneered and glanced at his rich second-generation friend, then said, how could that be? I just want to see how much longer Leona can keep being a simp. You have no idea. Every day after leaving my dad's company, when I go to Leona's place and see her fawning over me in that pathetic way, it just makes my day. I just treat her like a free dog, keeping her around for fun. Once Margaret returns to the country, I'll dump her immediately. That was the first time Leona felt the chilling despair of being plunged into an ice cellar. She directly knocked over the red wine on the tray and fled the bar in panic. Perhaps because she hadn't spoken for a while, the man on the other end of the phone seemed to sense her unusual state. He anxiously asked, Leona, what's wrong? Did something unpleasant happen at work? Leona forcibly endured the heart-wrenching pain as if being stabbed by a knife. Liam, in the 7 years we've been together, have you ever loved me? The man on the other end of the phone paused for several seconds before forcing a laugh. We've been married for so long. Why talk about love or not? Hurry back. I bought your favorite cake. If there's something bothering you, we can talk about it when you get home. Leona felt as if a sharp blade had pierced her heart once again. It was only then that she realized Liam had never once said he loved her. Because her emotions were unstable, Leona didn't return home until 10 o'clock at night. As soon as she entered, Liam impatiently said, why are you back so late? Didn't I call and tell you that today is my birthday? Leona didn't say a word, just calmly hung up her handbag. Even though her heart ached so much it trembled, yet she still didn't want to have a big fight with Liam. After all, when she was in the deepest abyss of pain, it was Liam who gave her a glimmer of hope. But her silence only angered Liam even more. His gaze swept over her, scrutinizing her from head to toe. Then he unleashed a torrent of furious words. Didn't you get me a birthday present? Haven't I been saying for a month that I wanted a watch? How can there be such a stingy woman in the world? You won't even buy your boyfriend a birthday gift when he asks for one. With that, He angrily shoved the unsteady low table aside, stood up, and stormed back into the room. Leona's pant leg was instantly stained red by the spilled takeout broth from his violent push against the table. Leona instinctively reached for tissues to wipe the oil stain off her pants. It was precisely this movement that allowed her to clearly see the flashing group messages on Liam's phone screen. Liam, hurry up and report back. Did that idiot Leona buy you the watch? Listen, if Leona doesn't buy you that watch tonight, you lose the bet at the next gathering. You'll have to drink 10 bottles of beer. Just thinking about how Leona worked like an idiot for a whole month just to buy you a yuan 4000 watch gets me excited. She's really stupid. Doesn't she know young Master Yi could casually buy a watch worth millions? And after she falls asleep, send us those slutty photos of her for the boys to see. Leona merely glanced at the flood of messages before coldly turning her head away. It wasn't that Leona wasn't shocked, not heartbroken, rather. Her heart had already ached as if it were about to stop beating long before she wandered outside. She agreed to marry the wealthy woman's vegetative son, with one condition being that the woman would help investigate Liam's identity, background, and past. No particular reason, just sheer luck. She naively thought Liam had mocked her in the VIP room just to show off in front of his rich second-generation friends, to ridicule her. She clung to the hope that even if Liam didn't love her that much, he wouldn't stoop so low as to look down on her. After all, they had been in love for 7 years. In the materials the noblewoman had sent her that afternoon, Liam was not only revealed to be of prestigious status, the second young master of the Yi family, leaders in the electronics industry, he was also childhood sweethearts with Margaret, the very person who had framed her for plagiarism and caused her expulsion from university. The two had even been betrothed since childhood. Moreover, during their 7-year relationship, Liam had frequently shared her private photos in wealthy social circles. Even her kindness toward Liam had become fodder for his amusement, something he shared daily with his circle of wealthy friends. Even the birthday watch he wanted was just the result of him and his rich kid friends having nothing better to do. They made a bet, which led Liam to pressure her, already juggling 2 jobs, into taking on a side gig at a bar. So what was this brief WeChat group spam? Merely a glimpse of the iceberg. Yet for some reason, the harder Leona tried to stay composed, the more heat welled up in her eyes, threatening to spill over. Coincidentally, Liam chose that exact moment to push open the door and step out. I'm telling you, Leona, if you don't go buy me that watch today, we're breaking up. Leona forced her tears back and nodded. Fine, let's break up then. Liam stared in disbelief, his eyes widening. She never expected Leona would actually dare to agree to the breakup. After all, during the 7 years they had been together, she had been like both a nanny and a simp, catering to his every whim. Back in college, Leona always ranked first in their year, not only snatching the scholarship from his childhood sweetheart and fiancée Margaret, but even stealing the opportunity to study abroad. Margaret had been proud since childhood. When had she ever endured such petty grievances? Seeing his fiancée, whom he doted on since she was little, frequently reduced to tears by Leona's provocations, even burning the midnight oil studying and reading just to surpass Leona, filled him with heartache. Unable to stomach it any longer, he deliberately sought out Leona's company. He'd merely fabricated a false identity on a whim, never expecting Leona would be foolish enough to believe it. While working part-time with him, she not only gave him half her salary, but even stood up for him, craning her neck defiantly, to argue with their supervisor when he got scolded for his lack of initiative. But Leona never stopped to consider, did he even need her help? The owner of the company where they worked part-time was his father, and it was him, prompted by his fiancée Margaret, who deliberately sabotaged Leona's thesis, costing her the opportunity to study abroad. It was also his calculated scheme that led to Leona being caught cheating on an exam, resulting in her forced expulsion. Unaware of the truth, Leona calmly told him, "It's all right, Liam, not going abroad is fine too. This way I can stay by your side forever. Being expelled isn't so bad either. Now I can focus entirely on working to earn money for your studies, and you won't have to do part-time jobs every day. And my mother, I can bring her to this city for treatment too." He couldn't understand why Leona treated him so kindly. Even his own father was as cold as a machine toward him. Yet Leona seemed willing to tear herself apart just to be good to him. He didn't believe Leona had no ulterior motives toward him. So he would frequently test Leona's loyalty and love for him using various disgusting methods. To his surprise, Leona passed every test flawlessly and managed to stay in a relationship with him for 7 years. But now this woman had actually agreed to break up with him. How dare she? Who did she think she was? A woman reeking of poverty like her, who else would want her besides him? Liam, his pride wounded, pushed over the low table in front of Leona with unprecedented fury. With a loud crash, Leona was not only splattered with greasy soup and dishes, her feet were even pierced by shattered bowls, leaving several bloody holes that oozed crimson. Leona, how dare you agree to break up? Let me tell you, I can propose breaking up, but you're not allowed to agree. I order you to apologize to me right this instant, or I'll never forgive you. Leona didn't hear what Liam was saying, she only lowered her gaze, staring unblinkingly as the blood on her instep slowly and rhythmically blended with the grease stains like paint mixing. Only then did she realize how painfully obvious Liam's lack of love had been all along. Leona didn't want to argue. Lowering her eyes, she said calmly, Liam, I know your identity now. You're the second son of the Yi group. A flash of panic instantly crossed Liam's eyes. You know my identity. How did you find out? Did you follow me? Leona, how could you be so disgusting? You actually resorted to stalking. Looking at the man who was still blaming her at this moment, Leona felt her heart tremble with pain once more. Liam, just go, let's part on good terms. Even raising a dog for 7 years would create feelings, let alone us being in a relationship for 7 years. Liam's heart skipped 2 beats, but within moments he regained his composure. He instinctively erupted in fury. Leona, so what if I deceived you and pretended to be poor? You should be grateful that a rich second generation like me would stoop to date someone like you. With your penniless stench, how could a woman like you ever land a high-quality man like me? I'm telling you, no matter what I've done, whether I deceived you or not, you Leona will always remain by my side. Before, she had only heard recordings, only seen documents, learning through intermediaries that Liam had never loved her. But now, this bone-chilling insult came directly from Liam's own mouth. Leona felt as if her entire being was about to shatter. With despairing anguish, she lifted her grief-stricken little face streaked with tears and said coldly, Liam, even if I die, I will never be with you again. Liam was stung by the resolve on Leona's face, but an even greater fury surged from the depths of his heart. How dare someone as wretched as Leona think she could leave him? Consumed by towering rage, Liam immediately threatened, Leona, I swear I'll make you crawl back on your knees, begging to be with me. With that, radiating an icy dominance, Liam turned and strode out the door, and at the moment Liam slammed the door of the rented apartment shut, Leona's body, like a feather drifting in the air, instantly collapsed onto the floor. She had been unlucky since childhood. The moment she was born, her mother suffered massive hemorrhaging, which not only killed her twin brother in the womb but also left her mother unable to bear children again. From the day she became aware of her surroundings, her ears were filled with nothing but disgusting, hateful words like jinx, worthless burden, or damned bitch, punctuated by her mother's frenzied beatings. At 3 years old, even the only father who loved her died at the construction site. Her mother, who blamed her for bringing misfortune upon her father, grew even more resentful and disgusted with her. So even on the day of her college entrance exams, when her grandmother barged into their home with a man trying to sell her off for a bride price of 200,000 yuan, her mother merely stood by sneering, watching her struggle like a madwoman, screaming, crying, and wailing in despair. If she hadn't jumped from the 2nd floor, her life would have been completely ruined. Liam appeared when she was dragging her broken leg, barely alive, rushing toward the exam hall. He was wearing a clean, neatly pressed shirt, pushing a bicycle, and frowned at her tear-streaked face before asking, "What's wrong? Do you need help?" At that time, she was drowning in despair, her dreams shattered, betrayed by her own mother and grandmother. She tugged at Liam's pant leg and immediately begged through tears, "Please, take me to the college entrance exam hall. Okay, I can't miss the test. I can't lose this chance. If I miss this exam, my life will truly be ruined." Without hesitation, Liam picked her up and placed her on the crossbar of his bicycle after hearing her plea. That day, the boy's panting breaths carried the fresh, subtle scent of laundry detergent, lingering around her nostrils and behind her ears. That day, the boy's chest was so warm it felt like her icy heart might melt away. Because of Liam, she didn't miss her exam, she even got into her dream university. She finally grasped the opportunity she'd waited 18 years for, her chance to break free from her family. So when she first laid eyes on Liam during her part-time job at university, she recognized him immediately. When she learned that Liam, just like her, came from a tragic and hopeless family background, Leona swore then that no matter what, she would always protect the boy who had once given her the courage to keep dreaming. But now, everything was clearly telling her, the boy she loved and cherished with her life, not only did he not love her, but he deceived and manipulated her, even treating her as a joke for his own amusement. How laughable it all was. And just as she was struggling to endure the suffocating pain, the phone rang. As soon as the call connected, the girl on the other end said anxiously, "Ms. Leona, please come to the hospital quickly. Your mother is throwing another tantrum." Leona didn't have time to dwell on her pain. She quickly went out, hailed a taxi, and rushed to the hospital. The moment she entered the hospital room, a cup of scalding hot water was hurled toward her face. "You wretched woman. If I had known you would be so unfilial, I should have smothered you at birth. Your own mother has cancer, suffering in the hospital, and not only do you give me the cheapest medicine, but you haven't even come to see me all these days. Tell me, did you break up with Liam? How could there be such a fool like you in the world? When Liam had no money, you insisted on being with him no matter what. And now that he has money, you want to break up with him. I'm telling you. Call Liam right now, immediately. He said that as long as you go back to be his mistress, he's willing to give you 200,000 a month, even if you have to go back and kneel to apologize. You must get Liam back for me." Feeling the stinging heat burning on her cheeks, Leona calmly crouched down to clean up the broken pieces on the floor. She had long grown accustomed to being her mother's emotional dumping ground. After all, from the moment she was born before her younger brother, it was decided that she would have to atone for him for the rest of her life. Even during these years of battling cancer, it was she who took care of him day and night without rest, working 3 jobs a day to pay for her treatment. Yet her mother still looked at her with nothing but disgust. In fact, to fund her medical expenses, her own mother had once even personally sent her to the bed of an old man, if she hadn't regained her senses just as her clothes were being stripped off. Her entire life would have been ruined by her own birth mother. I never expected that even now, her mother would still pressure her. With unprecedented anger, Leona immediately roared, "Are you really my mother? If you hate me this much, why didn't you just strangle me at birth? Do you know what Liam did? He said I was his pet dog. Not only did he treat me as a plaything for his amusement, but he also shamelessly slandered and insulted me in front of all his friends. But it's a man like this that you're now asking me to go back and kneel to win him back." Leona had thought her words might reawaken a trace of maternal instinct in Liam's mom, yet unexpectedly, Liam's mom only glanced at her with a sneer. "Liam wasn't wrong, you know, aren't you just the dog he raised? You chose to be this cheap, licking his boots for 7 years. Now that you know the truth, you suddenly can't take it anymore. Leona, your body has been completely used up by Liam. If you break up with him now, do you think any other man would want you? Since Liam is willing to spend 200,000 to support you, you should kneel down and kowtow in gratitude. Who told you to throw yourself at him so shamelessly in the first place?" Hearing Ye's harsh and disgusting words, Leona only curled her lips in a scornful sneer. Indeed, no matter when, she should never have expected even a shred of maternal affection from her mother, but what disgusted and repulsed her even more was, Liam actually had the nerve to urge her mother to threaten her on the very night they broke up. It wasn't even about getting back together, but about keeping her as a mistress. By the time Leona left the hospital, it was already past midnight. Just as she reached the hospital entrance, a Bentley pulled up right in front of her. "Ms. Leona, the madam sent me to bring you home, and the injuries on your face, shall I arrange for a private doctor to treat them?" Looking at the driver's fawning flattery, Leona curled her lips in a scornful smile. She should count herself lucky, at least her birth chart was still valuable enough to be used in a marriage to ward off evil for a comatose patient. The wealthy lady had found her a month ago. She said her birth chart matched that of her comatose son, and the fortune teller claimed that if she married her son, he would wake up. If she agreed to marry her son, not only would she receive 5 million, but she would also be sent abroad to study. Even though not finishing college was the biggest regret of her life, because of Liam, Leona refused without hesitation, but that very night, she overheard Liam's scornful remarks in the private room. After shattering that bottle of red wine in a panic, she had just fled the bar when the manager caught her and dragged her back. It turned out that bottle of red wine was worth 200,000. Upon learning she couldn't afford to pay it back. They not only had the bodyguards beat her but even threatened to force her to sleep with some old man to settle the debt. Just when she felt she had no way out, she called Liam, hoping he would save her. But that night, in the private room just a wall away, Liam and his rich second-generation friends were having a boisterous time. Every time she called, the phone would ring briefly before Liam silently hung up, and just as she was panicking, being dragged by the bar's bouncers to a five-star hotel, she ran into that wealthy lady. She was the one who saved her. At that moment, Liam, who had just received a call from his mom, angrily smashed his phone. He never expected that Leona wouldn't even listen to her own mother. Liam couldn't understand, he had only hidden his identity. What is she, Leona, making such a fuss about? If other women knew their boyfriend was this rich, they would have used every trick in the book to please him, and what frightened him even more was that he didn't know what was wrong with him. Ever since Leona broke up with him, his heart had been twinging with pain from time to time. Leona cooking for him, Leona carrying him to the hospital in the middle of the night when he had a fever, Leona scrimping and saving to buy all the daily necessities for him. These scenes kept popping into his mind. Just as he was feeling extremely depressed, his phone rang. "Hey, Liam, what are you up to? Let's go grab a drink." Liam was already in a foul mood and agreed without a second thought. As soon as he entered the private room of the bar, his friend Rex came over to greet him. "Liam, still upset over that little mistress you're keeping? If you ask me, that little mistress of yours just needs to be taught a lesson. As long as you discipline her thoroughly, she won't dare talk back to you again." As soon as Rex finished speaking, the group of rich second-generation heirs in the room burst into loud laughter. Liam couldn't be bothered to respond to them. He just sat down on the sofa with a gloomy expression and downed several glasses of alcohol in quick succession. But Rex's words reminded him, yes, it was precisely because she, Leona, had never learned her lesson that she could still manipulate the lingering affection he had for her, acting out, since Leona was unwilling to be his lover. He would force her into a corner with no way out. Leona had previously wanted to cook for Liam and also hoped to spend the evenings cuddling with him. So no matter how poor Leona was, she never intended to take on a part-time job at night. But now that Liam was gone, she found herself completely idle. So she went to a bar and found a job as a waitress. She had just walked into the private room carrying drinks, a bucket of icy, bone-chilling water poured down from above. The ice cubes not only pounded her scalp with a numbing pain, her entire body trembled violently from the intense cold, and before she could even regain her composure, mocking laughter came from not far away. "Ha ha ha, as expected, you're such a pathetic loser. Even getting splashed with water makes you look disgusting." In the blink of an eye after the words fell, Leona was knocked hard and fell to the ground. The red wine smashed onto the floor, its crimson liquid instantly staining the carpet. A wave of immense fear instantly seized her heart. With her delicate, palm-sized face, she trembled and looked up at the rich second-generation heir who had tripped her with his leg. "What do you want to do?" The rich second-generation heir looked at her with a sneer. "What do I want to do? Of course, I want to do you. I heard from young Master Yi that you want to break up with him. How could a lowly woman like you be worthy of breaking up with our young Master Yi? I'm Liam's brother. Since he was bullied, of course, I have to get revenge." Hearing the rich second generation mention Liam, Leona's heart instantly ached with a sharp pain. She got up from the ground and was about to leave, but before she could walk out the door, her hair was grabbed and pulled back violently. "You bitch, how dare you give me, Rex, such an attitude? Do you think I'm Liam, letting my dog bite people as I please? Since Liam can't bear to discipline you properly, I'll do it for her." As he spoke, the man grabbed her by the hair and violently dragged her to the coffee table in the center of the private room. Furious, he pressed her head down onto the foot of the rich second-generation heir who was stepping on the coffee table. "Aren't you supposed to have strong self-respect? Young Master Yi offered you 200,000 a month to be his mistress, and you still refused. I just want to see how tough you really are. Let me tell you, that bottle of red wine you just smashed is worth 200,000. If you don't lick my brother's leather shoes clean today, I'll send you to an old man's bed to pay off your debt." As he spoke, the man forcefully pressed her head down. Leona cried. Her body trembled as she cried. Just as she was overwhelmed by unbearable pain, the door of the private room was pushed open. A gloomy, mocking voice sounded from behind her. "Leona, now you know what I'm capable of. As long as you agree to be my lover, I'll pay the 200,000 for the red wine and have my men let you go." Leona turned back through the curtain of tears, and when she saw that the person coming was Liam, a wave of painful hatred spread from the depths of her heart. Leona had never imagined that the boy who once saved her from the filth would one day personally push her back into the abyss. Leona bit her lower lip hard and angrily shouted, "Liam, you make me sick right now." Liam was startled by the hatred flashing in Leona's eyes, but in the next second, he steeled himself, just as Rex said. Leona deserved to be taught a lesson. She had no idea how good he was to her, which was why she was so childish as to want to leave him. With that, he stepped forward and tightly grabbed Leona's chin. "Leona, do you know that my brothers have been wanting to have their way with you for a long time? After all, they admire your beautiful photos every day. Before, it was because of me that they didn't lay a hand on you. But since you're so determined to leave me, why should I continue to protect you?" As he spoke, Liam slowly straightened up and sneered. "Brothers, Leona is no longer mine. You can do whatever you want with her." Hearing Liam's words, Leona was instantly overwhelmed with terror and despair. She never expected that, in places she hadn't witnessed, Liam could be so vicious. But before she could even feel afraid, the next moment, her top was torn open by the rich second-generation heir who had restrained her. The sudden chill made Leona's body shrink back violently. She immediately burst into tears, but before she could react, another rich kid had already grabbed her by the hair and forced her to the ground. A wave of immense fear instantly spread through her heart, and her hatred for Liam instantly reached its peak. And just as she was in a state of terrified despair, a middle-aged man rushed into the room, seeing Leona pinned down on the sofa. He charged over and threw off the two men lying on top of her. Leona, are you all right?" Leona instinctively trembled and used her torn dress to cover her exposed body. "Please, take me away right now, immediately." The middle-aged man quickly walked over, took off his suit jacket, and draped it over Leona's shoulders. Liam watched the scene before him, his pupils contracting sharply. He had only intended to scare Leona, thinking that if she relented and agreed to be his mistress, he would let her go. Just when the plan was about to succeed, how could he possibly let Leona leave? "Who are you? Let her go." But as soon as he approached, he was kicked to the ground by the middle-aged man. The man glared fiercely at the group of rich kids in the room. "If you dare take another step forward, I guarantee you'll be half crippled by tonight." With that, the man supported Leona and turned to walk out the door. Meanwhile, Liam, who had been kicked until his nose was bleeding profusely, was consumed by overwhelming terror. He couldn't shake the feeling that if he let Leona leave today, they would become strangers forever. Just the thought of him losing Leona forever felt like a sharp blade ruthlessly stabbing at his heart. Liam instantly became like a beast choking at the throat, roaring at Leona with desperate fury. "Leona, if you dare leave today, Liam, will never want you again in this lifetime." Listening to Liam's words, Leona, tightly enveloped in terror and fear, could only tremble as she slowly turned around. "Liam, it's me who doesn't want you anymore. You disgust me now." The person who saved Leona that day was the wealthy woman's driver. After being rescued by the driver that day, she was taken to the wealthy woman's home. It was only then that she learned the wealthy woman was actually the richest person in City A. Her elite son Morgan had become vegetative in a car accident and hadn't woken up for 5 years, having lost faith in medicine. Mrs. Norton turned to metaphysics, deciding to use a wedding ceremony to awaken her son. She felt so fortunate, so incredibly fortunate, that her birth chart had caught Mrs. Norton's eye. That was the only way she managed not to be tortured to death by Liam. Unlike Leona's relief, Liam had plunged into complete panic ever since Leona left that night. He searched frantically for Leona everywhere. First, he went to Leona's company. The receptionist who greeted him told her with an apologetic look, Leona hadn't shown up at the company for many days. The receptionist's words plunged Liam into complete despair, because he knew how much Leona valued her work. This also reminded him of that girl who wore glasses every day and worked late into the night. In the past, he had simply thought Leona was foolish, working overtime until midnight for a salary of just a few thousand yuan. If Leona had buttered him up a little, he could have casually let slip from his fingers what would amount to half a year of her wages. Yet only now did he realize that while he had been lavish with other women, he'd casually opened bottles of wine costing 200,000 to 300,000 for his rich second-generation friends, yet he never spent a single cent on Leona. Instead, Leona used her meager salary of a few thousand yuan to buy him leather shoes, suits, and even underwear. Every single item in their daily life was purchased by Leona. Though he complained that the things Leona bought him were too cheap, he ended up using them the most. Before he knew it, 7 years had passed, and traces of Leona were woven into every aspect of his life. After leaving Leona's company, Liam headed to Liam's mom's hospital. She lay in bed, pale as ever. Seeing him arrive, Liam's mom fawned over him with an ingratiating smile. "Liam, you see, Auntie just didn't know your status before. That's why I spoke harshly to you. You must forgive Auntie. Don't worry, that night Auntie couldn't persuade Leona to be your lover, but I've got plenty of ideas. At worst, I'll pretend to be sick and tell Leona it'll take 500,000 to save my life. Rest assured, Auntie can absolutely guarantee Leona will become your lover for that 500,000. Listening to Liam's mom's disgusting ramblings, Liam clenched his fist once more. This also reminded him of his first year dating Leona. His relationship with Leona was discovered by Liam's mom, who went berserk upon learning he was just a penniless guy. She immediately demanded Leona break up with him. Liam's mom not only furiously scolded Leona as an idiot since wealthy men were willing to marry her, yet she insisted on choosing some penniless loser to force Leona into submission. She even beat her with a stick until her body was covered in bruises, leaving Leona's forehead bleeding from her mother's blows. Watching the mother and daughter fight, he felt nothing but disgust. How dare that wretched woman, Leona's mother, call him a loser? She wasn't even worthy. But considering he still had to maintain his disguise as a poor man, he held back from retaliating. No matter how much Liam's mom made a scene, Leona never wavered. She even held his hand and declared solemnly, "Mom, you can call me unfilial or say you'll beat me to death. I'll only ever be with Liam in this lifetime. I'll marry him and have his children." At the time, he wasn't moved by Leona's words. He couldn't help but sneer inwardly. As for Leona wanting to marry him, well, she'd have to prove herself worthy first. When Liam stepped out of the hospital, his entire body seemed imprisoned by the icy wind. It chilled him to trembling, froze him to the core. Just the thought of never seeing Leona again filled him with terror. He was terrified. So when Rex called inviting him for drinks at the bar, he immediately drove over. As he reached the private room's entrance, he overheard the conversation inside. "You have no idea. Just thinking about how slutty Leona looked standing there in her underwear makes me want to laugh. Tell me, how did she manage it? Even when we whipped her with belts, she didn't shed a single tear despite the pain. Back then, she got me so hard. If she hadn't been Liam's woman, I would have rushed over, ripped off her panties, and fucked her right then and there. You only got hard then. Fuck, I was already rock hard when she was licking my shoes. You guys think when Liam gets tired of playing with her, he'd be willing to let us take turns with Leona?" Standing outside the door, Liam listened to the sneering laughter of his rich second-generation friends inside, feeling as if he'd been plunged into an ice cellar. He'd always known these friends of his looked down on Leona, but he also knew these friends of his had their tongues corrupted by money. Even when cursing him, their words were often laced with filth. So he didn't interfere too much, but little did he know that they had been insulting Leona like this behind his back. With unprecedented fury, Liam violently kicked open the private room door. "Can't you fucking keep your mouths shut? How dare you mock my woman like this?" Seeing Liam overhear their words, the rich second-generation heirs instantly flushed crimson. You see, ever since Liam was kidnapped at 18, when his own father, egged on by his mistress, refused to pay the 100 million ransom, he'd returned a changed man. Though he still idled his days away like the rest of them, beneath that surface festered something venomous. The rich second-generation heir, fearing he might get burned, immediately tried to appease him. "Liam, don't be angry. That night we were just following your orders to teach Leona a lesson. It would have been better if the rich kid hadn't brought this up the moment he mentioned it." Overwhelming regret stabbed through his heart. What had come over him? How could he have been so blind? What possessed him to treat Leona like that night? She knew perfectly well that while Leona appeared weak, she was actually stubborn to the core. Even her own mother couldn't force her to do what she didn't want to. What made him think a little intimidation would make her bend her back? As if venting his anger, Liam threw a punch straight at the rich kid's face. What followed were punches landing on Rex's face, and then the faces of every spoiled heir in the private room. Liam was utterly furious. Originally, Leona's disappearance had already pushed him to the brink of suppressing his rage. Now provoked like this, he completely lost control. That night, Liam not only smashed the entire VIP room to pieces, he sent all these rich second-generation kids to the hospital. His hands were smashed to a bloody pulp, yet he didn't go to the hospital. Instead, he went to the rented apartment where he and Leona had lived for 7 years. Opening the door, he saw objects everywhere that bore traces of Leona's presence. He could no longer bear the immense pain. He cried out in agony. He really, seriously, missed Leona so much. Ever since Leona arrived at the Norton family villa, she had been shutting herself in her room. It wasn't until she seemed on the verge of starving herself to death that she finally crawled out of bed. Just as she stepped out of her room to find something to eat, a resentful gaze was directed her way. Leona slightly furrowed her brows, but before she could speak, a woman dressed in a nurse's uniform, with an exceptionally ordinary appearance and figure, approached her. With a fierce expression, she whispered to her, "I'm telling you, Morgan is mine. I won't let you marry Morgan." Leona stared at the woman's retreating figure, feeling somewhat dazed. And in the brief moment Leona was lost in thought, an excited voice suddenly rang out. "Leona, you're finally out. Are you feeling all right? Do you need me to call the private doctor?" Leona quickly greeted respectfully, "Mrs. Norton, hello." No wonder Leona was like this. The wealthy lady in front of her was not only about to become her mother-in-law, but she had also saved her from dire situations twice. Mrs. Norton found her a month ago. She said that her birth chart matched that of her comatose son, and the fortune teller claimed that if she married her son, he would wake up. If she agreed to marry her son, she would not only receive $5 million but also be sent abroad to study, even though not finishing college was the biggest regret of her life. And with that $5 million, she could send her mother abroad for cancer treatment. But because of Liam, Leona still refused immediately. Mrs. Norton didn't pressure her, only leaving a business card and telling her that if she changed her mind, she could call her. But that very night, she overheard Liam's scornful remarks in the private room. After shattering that bottle of red wine in a panic, she had just fled the bar when the manager caught her and brought her back. It turned out that bottle of red wine was worth $200,000. Upon learning she couldn't afford to pay for it, the bar manager not only had his bodyguards beat her, he even threatened to force her to sleep with some old man to pay off the debt. Just when she felt she had nowhere to turn, she called Liam, hoping he would save her. But that night, in the private room just next door, Liam and his rich second-generation friends were laughing and having a great time. Every time she called, the phone would ring briefly before Liam silently hung up, and it was right then, in her panic and as she was being dragged by the bar's bouncers to a 5-star hotel, that she ran into Mrs. Norton. It was Mrs. Norton who saved her. Even this time, when Liam had pushed her into a corner, it was Mrs. Norton who came to her rescue. For these two life-saving favors alone, she ought to be grateful. And just in the moment Leona was lost in thought, Mrs. Norton had already taken hold of her hand. "You don't need to be so polite. We're about to become family soon. By the way, you haven't met my son yet, have you? Let me take you to see him." Leona nodded instinctively. Leona expected to see a pale, disheveled man. After all, she had accompanied her mother during her cancer treatment at the hospital. She had seen many critically ill patients, their sallow complexions, emaciated bodies, and the aura of death that clung to them. But when she walked into Morgan's room, she was greatly startled by Morgan. She hadn't expected Morgan's appearance to be so striking. Morgan was wearing a simple white outfit, although he was lying flat on the hospital bed. It couldn't conceal his handsome features, especially when the ray of sunlight streaming through the window fell on his face. She even sensed a touch of fragile beauty about Morgan. Leona was stunned for 2 seconds. After all, everyone has an eye for beauty, especially when the other person is a handsome, strong, yet tragic man who perfectly fits her aesthetic preferences, and in that brief moment of her days, Mrs. Norton chuckled softly and turned her gaze toward her, like this. I'll step out first, and you can chat with Morgan for a while. After all, you're getting married in a few days, you might as well try to build some chemistry. Leona didn't understand what kind of relationship she could possibly build with a vegetative patient. Still, she nodded. After all, it was entirely thanks to her vegetative husband that she had managed to escape desperate situations twice. After Mrs. Norton left, she immediately walked toward Morgan. I am your newlywed wife. My name is Leona. I look forward to your guidance in the future. Your mother said our birth dates are well matched, and marrying me would help you wake up. Leona's voice was melodious, carrying a hint of unconscious anticipation as she spoke. It was no wonder Leona felt this way before coming to the Norton family. She had seen the video of Morgan's car accident. Morgan crashed into the guardrail to avoid an elderly person who suddenly appeared on the highway. If not for the timely rescue and the passing vehicles quickly extinguishing the fire, Morgan would not only have become a vegetable but could also have been disfigured. Leona had no experience communicating with a vegetative person. After saying a few random words, she completely ran out of things to say. After a few seconds of silence, Leona stood up and prepared to leave. He had just stood up when he suddenly noticed that the heart monitor on Morgan's index finger seemed about to fall off. She immediately bent down to adjust it for him, but as soon as her hand touched Morgan's palm, a furious scream came from behind her. What are you doing? Are you trying to kill Morgan? Leona was so startled by the voice that she immediately let go of Morgan's hand, but before she could react the next second, her body stumbled violently, and she was pushed to the ground by a woman who had suddenly entered. Feeling the pain in her lower body, Leona slightly furrowed her brows, but the next moment, the girl who had threatened her in the restaurant, saying she wouldn't let her marry Morgan, angrily shouted, "You disgusting bitch. You actually tried to kill Morgan." Leona didn't even care about the pain coursing through her body, immediately scrambling to her feet in a panic. She had just arrived at the Norton residence and already wanted to kill her future vegetable of a husband. This was a charge she couldn't afford to bear. Just as she opened her mouth to explain, a sharp smack echoed as the woman slapped her across the face. "You bitch, let me tell you, if you dare harm Morgan, I'll kill you." Leona covered her numb and stinging cheek, immediately feeling a surge of anger from being slapped. What's wrong with this person? They didn't even listen to an explanation before hitting someone. She reached out her hand, wanting to slap them back, but as she reached out her hand, an angry voice came from behind. "Stop." Leona turned her head and immediately saw Mrs. Norton standing at the door. She awkwardly withdrew her hand and was about to explain. The woman had already run toward Mrs. Norton, crying, "Madam, this Leona is trying to harm the young master. I saw her remove the young master's oxygen mask. The private doctor said that the young master has been lying down for too long. If the oxygen mask is removed, it could potentially cause brain damage." This Leona came and immediately wanted to remove the young master's oxygen mask. She must have been sent by a competitor. "Madam, you should quickly kick her out." Leona's pupils suddenly widened. She hadn't expected this woman to be so malicious, casually slandering her without any basis. Just as she was about to explain excitedly, Mrs. Norton coldly said to the woman, "Mary, there are surveillance cameras in this room." Mary's cry was instantly choked in her throat. Leona also let out a long sigh of relief at Mrs. Norton's words. Just as she was feeling grateful for Mrs. Norton's reasonableness, Mrs. Norton turned to her with a cold expression and said, "Leona, go back to your room first." Leona thought Mrs. Norton was blaming her for causing trouble. She didn't force any further explanations and returned to her room. After all, she had just arrived. As long as this Mary didn't pin the crime of harming the eldest young master on her, she could simply stay out of it. After all, she had come to marry into the family to bring good fortune, not to compete with a little nanny for a man. Leona had no idea what Mrs. Norton wanted to talk about with that Mary, but she had just arrived, and having clashed with the nanny who had taken care of Morgan for 5 years, she couldn't guarantee that Mrs. Norton wouldn't blame her. Just as she was struggling with whether she should go and apologize to that little nanny if all else failed, her room door was knocked. Leona opened the door to find Mrs. Norton smiling at her. "I saw the light was still on in your room, so I thought I'd come and have a word with you." Leona quickly stepped aside to let Mrs. Norton in. Mrs. Norton got straight to the point. I've already dismissed Mary. Rest assured, no servant will ever dare to shout at you again. A flicker of surprise crossed Leona's face, and she hurriedly said, Mrs. Norton, you don't have to do this. After all, she has taken care of Mr. He for 5 years. There's no need to make her leave because of me. Just now, it was my fault. I didn't know those instruments couldn't be touched. I just saw that the heart monitor on Morgan's finger had come off, so I thought I'd adjust it for him. Mrs. Norton smiled and took her hand, back in the coffee shop. I promised you that as long as you married my son, I would give you the most luxurious wedding. Now, I assure you again, as long as you marry into the Norton family, not to mention a nanny who has taken care of Morgan for 5 years, even if any of the Norton relatives dare to bully you, I will stand up for you. As the daughter-in-law of the Norton family, I am not someone that just any random nobody can bully. Leona's eyes instantly grew warm. After all, never in her life had anyone treated her with such solemn importance. Since she was a child, everyone had looked down on her for being a girl. She not only had to endure their disdainful words but also bear the burden of household chores far beyond what a child her age should have to do. Even during the 7 years she was in a relationship with Liam, she was the one who gave more. Occasionally, colleagues would be surprised when they heard her describe her life with Liam. No way, Leona. Did you find a giant baby or a boyfriend? Every time she heard her colleagues' judgments, she would only respond with an awkward smile. She knew there were problems in her relationship with Liam, but from childhood to adulthood, no one had ever told her what respectful family love or respectful romantic love should look like. If she hadn't accidentally overheard Liam and his rich second-generation friends mocking her, she still wouldn't know that her kindness toward Liam had long been labeled as simping. Leona held back her tears and nodded immediately. Thank you, Aunt He. Just as Mrs. Norton had said, when Leona went to Morgan's room the next day, she never saw Mary again. The nanny who replaced Mary was now a 40-year-old woman. The woman was very respectful toward her and quietly stepped out of the room as soon as she saw Leona enter Morgan's space. Leona only stayed in Morgan's room for half an hour because she had to try on her wedding dress today, but it was precisely this brief half hour that made her realize how exceptional Morgan was. He graduated from an Ivy League university and returned to China at the age of 24 to take over his mother's family business. Not only did he grow the company exceptionally well, but he even ventured into new business sectors. Moreover, Morgan was an incredibly kind-hearted person, donating 20% of the company's profits to charity every year without ever seeking public recognition. If not for that tragic car accident, someone as extraordinary as Morgan would never have become Leona's newlywed husband. It was hard to say whether she was lamenting Morgan's misfortune or her own wretched existence. As insignificant as an ant's, she instinctively sat down beside Morgan and grasped his hand. You and I are about to get married. If only you could wake up before the wedding. Then I wouldn't have to stand alone on that stage. And thank you for letting me meet you, for showing me that warmth still exists in this world. Having said this, Leona found she had nothing more to say, but Mrs. Norton clearly wanted her and Morgan to bond a bit more. Leaving after just sitting for a few minutes would seem rather impolite. Yet sitting here doing nothing felt awkward too. She immediately thought of the mystery novel she'd been following, without hesitation. She took out her phone and began reading softly to Morgan. After reading mystery novels for half an hour, Leona followed the driver to the bridal shop. This was her third visit. During the previous 2 dress fittings, Aunt He hadn't been satisfied and insisted on having the gown altered by the company. Actually, for Leona, that wedding dress was already perfect. She had never even dreamed she would wear such a beautiful gown. During her 7-year relationship with Liam, she had indeed thought about marrying him, but every time she remembered her mother battling cancer, she dismissed the idea. She couldn't burden Liam with her personal desires, so when Liam didn't bring up marriage, neither did she. She had just entered the bridal shop when the receptionist warmly ushered her into the fitting room. When she emerged wearing the pristine white wedding dress, Leona smiled radiantly and immediately asked the attendant to take a few photos to send to Mrs. Norton, who was in a meeting. Just as Leona was about to change out of the gown after the photo shoot, Mary stormed in with several women in tow. You disgusting tramp, you shameless homewrecker, not only did you steal my husband, but now you dare to try on wedding dresses. Leona didn't even have time to cry for help before her hair was viciously yanked by the group of women Mary had brought. What followed was a relentless barrage of slaps, punches, and kicks, dazed by the sudden assault. Leona could only instinctively twist her body, trying desperately to evade Mary's gang, but the more she struggled, the more fists rained down upon her, the more slaps struck her face, until Leona's entire body trembled with pain. Mary and her group were finally restrained by the bridal shop staff. As Leona lay on the ground, too hurt to get up, Mary continued screaming, "You shameless homewrecker, I swear if you dare steal Morgan from me, I'll kill you. I won't just scratch your face, I'll even have men take turns with you. Send your whorish mistress as straight to hell." Listening to Mary's furious curses, Leona endured the searing pain and strode over angrily, slapping Mary across the face. Leona wasn't angry that Mary had hit her. She'd taken plenty of beatings in her lifetime, but her heart ached for this wedding dress, carefully prepared for her by Mrs. Norton. "Mary, do you really think I, Leona, am made of clay, to be bullied by you? If your mind isn't right, go to the hospital and get it treated. You say Morgan is your husband, but how is he yours? You're just the caregiver he hired." After saying this, she turned her gaze back to the staff at the bridal shop. "Help me take her to the police station, and I'll have the He family's lawyer handle it later." The bridal shop staff wouldn't dare offend Leona. They were already terrified witnessing her being beaten in their store. Now who would complain about it being troublesome? They immediately grabbed the women's arms and started dragging them out, but the next second, a delicate voice rang out from behind them. "I never thought the legal wife beating the mistress would actually get hauled off to the police station. I must say your bridal shop has shockingly little social responsibility, and you're supposed to be in the wedding business." Leona never expected someone would actually come to her aid, gritting her teeth against the searing pain. She turned around, and there was Margaret's face swimming into her blurred vision, her pupils instantly darkened with fury. It was Margaret who had snatched away her chance to study abroad back then, and it was Margaret who deliberately framed her, leading to her expulsion for cheating during her junior year. Just thinking about how she'd exerted every ounce of effort to get into university, only to be denied graduation because of Margaret's schemes. She hated with such intensity that her teeth ground together. She was just about to angrily retort. Liam suddenly rushed out from behind Margaret. "Leona, how could you stoop so low? For money, you'd actually become someone's mistress." Liam was going crazy. He had searched for Leona for so long without finding her. Yet he never expected their reunion would be seeing Leona in a wedding dress, and to be beaten and cursed at by another woman, labeled as the other man, in his memory. Leona would never sell her body for money. When Leona first started working, she was immediately pursued by a greasy man. At that time, Leona also learned her mother needed surgery. She was desperately short of money. At that time, he had the ability to help Leona, but he simply didn't. He was just testing whether Leona was a shameless gold digger. The answer Leona gave him left him very satisfied. Not only did she not fall into depravity, she even used her wits to send that man to prison. It was also through that incident that he reluctantly decided to accept Leona as his lover, but he never expected that Leona hadn't sold her body back then. Yet 7 years passed, and now he had even broken off his engagement with Margaret in an attempt to win Leona back. He was beaten black and blue by his biological father, who even threatened him using his own mother. He never compromised, not even when he proposed a sham marriage to Margaret, going to extreme lengths just to marry Leona. Yet Leona ended up becoming another man's mistress. The mere thought of Leona's body being touched by that old man filled him with hatred, so intense it made his teeth grind. With unprecedented hatred, he rushed over and tightly grabbed Leona's wrist. "Leona, do you still have any sense of decency? Isn't it just money you want? I'll give it to you. Why do you have to sell yourself?" Leona looked at her wrist gripped by Liam, and a wave of nausea instantly surged in her chest. She furiously shoved Liam away. "Liam, who do you think you are? I'll do whatever I please." With that, she strode toward Margaret. "Margaret, how's that study abroad opportunity you stole from me by framing me? Did you think dipping yourself in foreign gold would magically fill your brain with it? Let me tell you this, everything you took from me back then, I'm taking it all back now." Leona dared to openly confront Margaret like this because she had gained confidence. And this confidence was given by Mrs. Norton. She believed that no matter what status Margaret held, as long as she remained the daughter-in-law of the Norton family for even one day, she could stand against Margaret for that day. But to her surprise, as soon as she finished speaking, Liam walked over angrily. "Leona, what are you doing? How could you speak to Margaret like that?" It was no wonder Liam was so alarmed. He had put in so much effort to convince Margaret, who had been pampered since childhood, to agree to a fake marriage with him. If Leona were to completely offend her, how could he still marry Leona? Leona had no idea about Liam's intentions. If she really knew, she would be disgusted enough to feel sick. She looked at Liam, who was defending Margaret. An instinctive disgust made him take 2 steps back, and at that moment, Margaret also spoke up. She glanced at Leona with a look of contempt, as if looking at an insect, and said to Liam, "Are you sure you want to marry such a disgusting and lowly creature? Do you really understand what you'll face by bringing this lowly woman into your home? Are you truly prepared to stand against the entire Yi family?" Liam, after speaking, Margaret looked at the staff of the bridal shop. "Release the woman in your hands immediately, and send this woman named Leona to the police station right now." Hearing Margaret's words, the employees of the bridal shop immediately froze in place. They all knew the Osborne family's daughter, who had been pampered since childhood. They couldn't afford to offend her. Although Mrs. Norton seemed to come from an ordinary family, Mrs. Norton herself had personally come several times to help this Mrs. Norton choose her wedding dress. She must be of considerable status. For a moment, all the staff were at a loss. Before the staff could even react to the suffocatingly tense atmosphere, Leona walked over and slapped Margaret across the face with a sharp smack. "Do you think I'm giving you face, Margaret? What gives you the right to send me to the police station? Do you really think that just because you wear the skin of the Osborne family's heiress, you're some kind of noble lady? You're nothing but an illegitimate child. Your father had an affair with a prostitute, and after she gave birth to you, she died. Your dad threatened his original wife with divorce just so you could play the part of the Osborne family's heiress. Do you think your blood is so clean and noble? Not only were you born to a prostitute, but you're also the daughter of a mistress." Hearing Leona's words, Margaret trembled with rage throughout her entire body. She never expected Leona to know such private matters. These things were known only to their Osborne family. Not even Liam, who was about to marry her, was aware. Holding her stinging and numb cheek, Margaret immediately roared, "Leona, I will make sure you, this slut, suffer a fate worse than death." As she spoke, Margaret pulled out her phone and was about to call her bodyguards. But the next moment, an angry voice rang out, "I'd like to see who dares to make our Norton family's daughter-in-law suffer a fate worse than death." Mrs. Norton was absolutely furious. She had originally just finished a meeting and happened to see the wedding photos sent by her daughter-in-law. On a whim, she decided to take a look. Little did she expect to find that her daughter-in-law had been mistaken for a mistress and beaten. How dare a mere bastard from the Osborne family threaten her daughter-in-law, making her wish she were dead yet unable to die. With unprecedented fury, Mrs. Norton angrily turned to her secretary behind her and said, "Notify the Osborne family to come to the Norton residence tonight. I want to ask them how the Osborne family educates their bastards, bullying people right onto my Norton family's daughter-in-law." The secretary immediately took out the phone with trembling hands and walked out. Mrs. Norton Margaret. She then turned her head to look at the staff of the bridal shop. "I spent so much money designing the dress at your bridal shop. And look what you've done, you actually let my daughter-in-law get beaten up after being mistaken for a mistress. Just you wait, I'm definitely going to complain to your supervisor and boss." After saying this, Mrs. Norton walked over with a pained expression and supported Leona, looking at the bruises on her face. She immediately said with concern, "Does your face hurt? Mom will take you to the hospital right now." Leona felt the warmth coming from her arm. The warmth in her eyes was impossible to contain. This was the first time she had ever been protected like this, and just as Leona was deeply moved, Margaret had long been stimulated by the scene before her, her pupils turning crimson with rage. Liam was equally astonished, never having imagined that Leona had actually attached herself to the Norton family, a household he wouldn't dare provoke. Just as the two were trembling in fear, Leona turned to Mrs. Norton and said, "Mom, I want Margaret to return what she took from me back then. Is that okay?" Mrs. Norton looked at the girl who was cautiously asking for her opinion. Her heart instantly ached with a pang of pity. When she sought Leona for the wedding to bring good fortune, she had already investigated Leona's past. While reading the investigation report back then, she felt a pang of sympathy for this strong yet vulnerable girl. Having her marry into the Norton family was not only to bring good luck but also to give Leona a helping hand. Whether her son would wake up or not, at the very least, she considered it an act of kindness using a marriage to free Leona from the constraints of her birth family. But ever since Leona arrived at the Norton household, the more time she spent with her, the more her heart ached for her. She instinctively reached out and stroked Leona's head. "Leona, as long as you're Norton's daughter-in-law for even a day, Mom will protect you for that day. Do whatever you want." Meanwhile, Margaret, who had been standing nearby, trembled violently at Mrs. Norton's words. She hurried forward anxiously and said, "Auntie, don't be fooled by this bitch Leona. She's a pathological liar. Believe me, back in college, she even sold herself, not only slept with old men but also worked as a hostess in bars. Although brother he is in a vegetative state and can't do anything, you can't just find any woman and make him marry her." At the same time, Liam also woke up startled. He anxiously explained to Mrs. Leona is my girlfriend. You can't just snatch her away to marry Morgan." Listening to their exchange, Leona trembled with anger. Just as she was about to erupt in anger, Mrs. Norton patted her hand. "Indeed, engaged couples do speak alike shamelessly without limits. Since you two are so perfectly matched, I'll communicate with both your fathers tonight to arrange your marriage as soon as possible." With that, Mrs. Norton had no desire to waste another word on them. Her daughter-in-law was still injured. She had no time to waste arguing with these two ill-behaved youngsters. After all, stabbing someone should be done in private, why put it out in the open? Though Leona didn't understand why Mrs. Norton had softened so much, simply ending the conversation by insisting the two get married. She had only spent a few short days with Mrs. Norton, yet she trusted Mrs. Norton completely. As long as Mrs. Norton was there, all the torment and suffering she had endured, he could take revenge on them all. Morgan was speechless. He had stayed awake until midnight, yet his newlywed wife, who had promised him that morning she'd return after her dress fitting to read him the novel's finale, never came home. For 5 years as a vegetative patient, he endured daily violations from his caregiver named Mary, molestation, kisses, even caresses. He had long been nauseous to the point of vomiting. What made it worse was that none of the caregivers knew his hobbies or interests. Every day, they either read him those hefty economics tomes or played various factual news broadcasts. His mother was even more ruthless. Every night, she would come and read him company annual reports and various business plans, even before becoming vegetative. He had already loathed work intensely, exhausted to the point of wanting to quit long ago, but after he became vegetative, these people still wouldn't let him be, tormenting even his consciousness. Only the newlywed wife his mother had arranged for him, who came to his house a few days ago, seemed somewhat reliable. When she told him about her life experiences, he almost cried listening to her. What's more, the other party knew his taste perfectly, reading him mystery novels every day. And they were particularly good at keeping him hooked. Each time, they'd stop abruptly right at the crucial moment. If he weren't a vegetative patient, he'd have leapt up to spend $99 million just to buy a membership. Coincidentally, just as her delicate young wife was reading to her at the most thrilling part this morning, the household servant came to summon her out. Now here he was, stubbornly clinging to life by this wisp of immortal breath. Sleep was impossible, yet awake, he couldn't stop wondering who the murderer was. After struggling through the entire day, night finally fell, yet his delicate little wife stubbornly refused to come home. It infuriated him so much he wanted to wake up immediately and drag his precious wife back. Just as Morgan was trembling with rage, his mother pushed the door open and walked in. "It's me, not your wife, Leona. She's hospitalized. Today, your little maid who served you for 5 years beat her up at the bridal shop," Mrs. Norton said calmly, while pouring herself a glass of milk. It had long become a habit to chat and communicate with her vegetative son as if he were normal. She wasn't sure if it was her imagination, but she always felt her vegetative son could hear her words. And just as she was telling him everything that had happened today in her usual rambling manner, Morgan was absolutely furious. if he weren't currently in a vegetative state, he would have jumped up right then to confront his mother. Had she grown senile, resorting to such crude methods? Those people dared to bully his wife like that. It's unclear whether she heard his inner thoughts. Liam's mom suddenly laughed. I'm sure you're angry that my methods were so poor, causing your wife to be bullied. After all, you've always been one to count every penny. Back when your classmate, out of jealousy for scoring better than him, deliberately kicked you, he apologized with a smile. And you smiled back saying it was fine, but after school that same day, you secretly lured him to a wasteland 10 kilometers away and made him get chased and bitten by dogs. I'm not you. If you're really that angry, then wake up already, protect your own wife yourself. Morgan knew his mother was deliberately provoking him. After he became vegetative, her mother had tried every possible way to provoke her, like being bullied by the company's shareholders. Like the company being on the verge of bankruptcy, like telling him they'd found him a wife with buck teeth and plain looks. TCH, he crawled out of his damn mother's womb. How could she not know his mother was deliberately provoking him to wake him up? But this wasn't something he could control. He always felt as though something was controlling his body. And at this moment, Leona, lying in the ICU ward, remained sleepless throughout the night. It wasn't because she had seen Liam, but because of what happened today. It felt as if she had been reborn. And just during her hospitalization, Mrs. Norton indeed did as she said. Not only did she have Margaret and Liam publicly announce their marriage, she even directly revealed Margaret's identity as an illegitimate child. What surprised her even more was that Mrs. Norton had even uncovered the evidence of how Margaret had publicly framed her for cheating back then. And what surprised him most was that Liam was actually involved in it. Even her losing the opportunity to study abroad with a guaranteed placement had Liam's hand in it. When Leona found out about this, she was unusually calm, without even a ripple of emotion. It was only to be expected, wasn't it? After all, Liam's contempt for her had long been etched into his very bones. Perhaps it was after coming to terms with all of this, Leona immediately decided to leave the hospital. Since she had to break it off, she had to do it cleanly and thoroughly. She immediately had the driver take her to the rental apartment. As soon as the door opened, she saw Liam lying on the floor, his face flushed with drunkenness. Instinctively, she furrowed her brows tightly. She was about to turn around and have her driver, who also served as her bodyguard, throw Liam out. Seeing Leona, Liam immediately crawled toward her on all fours. Leona, you're back. I knew you couldn't bear to leave me, right? Let me explain. I didn't marry Margaret on purpose. I was forced into it. Last night, Mrs. Norton went to see my father. If I didn't agree to marry Margaret, I would be kicked out of the house. If I were kicked out, I'd have no money. How could I possibly support you in the future? Looking at Liam with his bloodshot eyes, a trace of disgust flashed through Leona's heart once again. It was only at this moment that she realized Liam was not only selfish but also extremely narcissistic. Back when she was still with Liam, the investigation materials Mrs. Norton had given her had already indicated this. Liam's past tragic experiences. Although Liam is the second son of the Yi group, born to Mr. Yi's first wife, his older brother is actually the child of a mistress, and he has 6 other half-siblings from his father's extramarital affairs. Liam's biological mother suffered from severe depression. From childhood, she would either beat or scold him, constantly calling him stupid or foolish for failing to win his father's affection. It wasn't until Liam turned 18 that he was kidnapped by a rival of the Yi group, with the kidnappers demanding a ransom of 1 billion to release him. Not only did Mr. Yi refuse to pay the ransom, but he also directly told the kidnappers that they could go ahead and kill the hostage if they wanted. And it was from that incident that Liam seemed to have completely changed into a different person. When she received the investigation report at the time, Leona had once naively thought that at least Liam hadn't lied to her about everything. So, even though she was filled with intense hatred after discovering Liam's deception, she never resented Liam. She only wanted to part on good terms with him. But it was only now that she realized Liam might never have felt he had hurt her. After all, the very foundation of Liam's character was selfishness. After coming to a realization, Leona no longer dwelled on it and directly pried open Liam's palm. Liam, we've already broken up. You're about to become someone else's groom, and I'm about to become someone else's bride. So please don't say things that could be misunderstood anymore. Liam looked into Leona's eyes, which held not a trace of affection, and felt another sharp pain in his chest. He once again desperately clung to Leona's thigh. "Leona, listen to me. The reason I treated you that way that night was because I was too scared. The mere thought of you leaving me fills me with terror and fear. And you said it yourself, Leona, that you would always be mine. Liam, how can you go back on your word and break your promise?" As he spoke, Liam directly unbuttoned his shirt, revealing the bruises on his back. "Look, these are all from my father beating me because I broke off the engagement with Margaret for you. So, Leona, you must not leave me. If you leave me, I will truly die." Leona looked coldly at Liam. How cheap is this belated affection, even less than grass? But Liam had no idea what Leona truly cared about. She took a deep breath. "Liam, you're as selfish as ever." With that, she sharply shook off Liam's hand. She then turned to the driver and bodyguard behind her and said, "I don't want to struggle with him anymore. Please help me restrain him." The driver immediately stepped forward in response. Liam still wanted to struggle and explain. He really loves Leona, but being already drunk, how could he possibly be a match for a bodyguard who was a retired Special Forces soldier? As soon as he struggled, the bodyguard pinned him firmly to the ground. Leona only glanced at Liam indifferently, with no intention of stopping the bodyguard at all. Perhaps it's for the best, letting Liam witness with his own eyes as she destroys everything they've built over these 7 years might just sever his lingering fantasies. With this thought, Leona stepped inside. The first things she cleared out were the photographs in the house. Next came the colorful clothes and daily necessities she had bought for Liam. Finally, there was the computer filled with every little detail of her life with Liam. Liam's eyes burned crimson as he watched Leona move, regret piercing his heart like sharp blades. Only now did he clearly realize, Leona truly no longer loved him. Little Tiger Bot document anti-theft seal. Find a book bot, choose Little Tiger, stable and reliable, no pitfalls, immersive translate. As Leona reduced everything in the rented room to ashes, she unfastened a bracelet from her wrist and tossed it before Liam. The bracelet on Leona's wrist was something she always wore. He once asked her what significance this bracelet held. At that time, Leona looked at him with a charming and playful expression. "I'll tell you when we get married in the future." Back then, he only asked briefly before dropping the subject. For no particular reason, it was simply because he had never thought about marrying Leona. Leona looked at Liam's bewildered expression. She just pursed her lips lightly and said, "Liam, I told you before, I'll explain the meaning of this bracelet when we get married." But in fact, there was another line below that. "And I'll also tell you the meaning of this bracelet when we break up. Thank you, Liam, for taking me to the college entrance exam on your bicycle when I was 18. And thank you for reigniting my dream of a better future when I was trapped in filth. These past 7 years. Consider them my repayment for saving my dreams back then." After saying this, Leona turned away indifferently and walked out the door. The moment Leona left, Liam tremblingly picked up the bracelet she had left for him. It was only then that he remembered that when he was 18, he had once saved a girl. He had even given the girl a bracelet that Margaret no longer wanted, encouraging her to do her best in the college entrance exams. But he never expected that the girl would turn out to be Leona. After Leona had taken care of everything, she returned to the Norton family. As soon as she entered the door, Mrs. Norton came over and began to shower her with warm greetings and inquiries about her well-being. After chatting with Mrs. Norton for a few moments, Leona then went to Morgan's room. She looked at the man lying on the sickbed, his complexion pale and his appearance elegant and handsome. Leona didn't know why, but she felt like crying. She walked forward, held Morgan's hand, and told him about her recent meeting with Liam. Although she no longer loved Liam, the 7 years of feelings had turned into nothingness, and she still felt somewhat sad. Lying in the hospital bed, Morgan listened as his newlywed wife told him stories about her ex-boyfriend. It was more suffocating than choking on a cake that tasted like shit. He knew the guy named Liam. He was a few years younger than him. "He's just a bastard." A bastard came knocking at the door, and instead of dealing with it, he just complains about everything. After meeting Liam once, he never thought about getting to know him better. Such a spineless loser isn't worth a single glance from him. But now this weakling has become his love rival, and even hurt his little fiancée. This made him furious. But fortunately, his fiancée has a discerning eye and knows that he is the best. Especially when he heard his little fiancée say, "Have the bodyguard press Liam to the ground and kick him like a dog." A surge of satisfaction welled up in his chest. "Such trash deserves to be thrown in the garbage," Leona cried bitterly in Morgan's room. My mood improved quite a bit. Then she turned and went back to her room. She never expected that Liam and Margaret's wedding would be held so quickly. The next day, Mrs. Norton informed her that she was to go with her to attend Liam's wedding. Leona was a bit reluctant to go, but Mrs. Norton took her by the hand. "Sending a wreath to your ex is the best blessing you can give." Leona froze for a moment. She immediately laughed. Indeed, having Margaret and Liam get married was practically sending the scumbag and the bitch to their doom, wasn't it? With unprecedented excitement, Leona put on the most expensive dress Mrs. Norton had prepared for her. When she arrived at the wedding venue, the moment Liam saw her, he immediately rushed over. "Leona, you're here to object to the wedding, aren't you? You couldn't bear to lose me after all, could you?" At that moment, Liam was standing at the wedding entrance greeting guests, with many attendees bustling around the doorway. Hearing Liam's words, everyone was stunned. Meanwhile, Margaret, who stood beside Liam, wore an exceptionally gloomy expression on her face. Ever since Margaret returned to her home country and encountered this Leona, nothing good has happened to her. First, her fawning fiancé not only wanted to call off their engagement, then her identity as an illegitimate daughter was exposed one after another. Thinking of all the mockery she endured in the circle of wealthy heiresses these days, Margaret gritted her teeth in fury. Now, even her newlywed husband had the audacity to openly declare his intention to flee their wedding ceremony. At this thought, Margaret clenched her palms tightly once more. Leona had no idea what was going through Margaret's mind. She merely glanced at Margaret's gloomy expression before waving her hand dismissively at the bodyguard behind her. In mere moments, rows of black-suited bodyguards carried in dozens of funeral wreaths. "I'm not here to crash the wedding, I'm here to deliver wreaths for you. May you live happily together for 100 years, and share a coffin in death." The pristine white wedding venue now leaned against Leona's dozens of funeral wreaths. The sacred wedding venue instantly transformed into a funeral scene. To everyone's surprise, Liam smiled and said, "Leona, I knew you couldn't bear to lose me. You came here deliberately to provoke me, didn't you?" Leona was utterly speechless. He never expected Liam to still be this insane even now. Margaret was absolutely furious. She had always cared deeply about saving face, and now Leona was causing a scene at her wedding. It was nothing short of a public humiliation. He stormed forward in an instant. "Leona, you wretched woman, what the hell do you think you're doing?" Before Margaret could even finish speaking, a middle-aged wealthy woman who had been standing nearby suddenly stepped forward. Slap! A hand landed on Margaret's face. "Little Tiger bot for document anti-piracy. Choose Little Tiger for book searching, stable and reliable, no stepping into pitfalls. Shameless thing. How dare a bastard daughter throw a tantrum at Mrs. Norton? Is this how my Osborne family taught you, to be so ignorant of etiquette and shame?" It's no wonder the wealthy lady was so furious. You see, Margaret was the daughter of a low-born woman. After her mother died, Margaret was brought home by her philandering husband. All these years, because of her husband's favoritism, she had not only endured enough of Margaret's unjustified anger, even her own son and daughter couldn't stand Margaret's torment anymore. It was also Margaret's own fault for provoking the Norton family, which made her husband, who had always prioritized his own interests, grow to despise her. Now there was a chance for revenge. Of course, she wouldn't miss it. Margaret was publicly beaten, losing not only face but also her dignity. Yet she dared not make a scene in the slightest. She was no longer the person she used to be. Spoiled by her father, she understood the importance of weighing advantages and disadvantages. She didn't explode in anger either, only fixing Leona with a pair of gloomy, piercing eyes. "This bitch, she'll deal with her sooner or later." Leona didn't care what Margaret thought. She was in a good mood. This was also the first time she felt how good it was to have someone powerful backing her up. But the next second, Mrs. Norton patted the back of her hand. "Don't worry, there's more excitement to come." Leona didn't understand at first what kind of excitement Mrs. Norton was referring to. But it wasn't until the wedding ceremony began, and videos of Margaret's promiscuous encounters with various men abroad were played at the wedding venue, Leona finally let out a light laugh. Mrs. Norton looked at the smile on Leona's face. "Are you happy?" Leona nodded. "Yes, I am. Who would have thought Mrs. Norton would let out a long sigh. If Morgan were still awake, today wouldn't just be about letting Margaret lose a little face. You don't know Morgan, he's incredibly cunning and treacherous. And sometimes even I find his methods frightening. He's always been fiercely protective of his own. If he were to wake up and find out his wife had been bullied, who knows how furious he'd be." Leona was somewhat puzzled. After all, in her eyes, the man lying in the hospital bed exuded an air of scholarly refinement. He looked like someone with a rather gentle disposition. No matter how Leona tried to imagine it, she couldn't picture Morgan being the way Liam's mom described. After Margaret's short video was played at the wedding that day, Leona left the event early with Mrs. Norton. It was only later, when Mrs. Norton told her that she found out, at the wedding, Liam saw Margaret's video and immediately went crazy. Not only did he get into a fight with Margaret, he even almost hit Mr. Lou during the commotion. As a result, both Liam and Margaret became the laughingstock of the entire high society circle, even on the second day. The two were forcibly sent abroad by their parents. Leona only listened for a moment before withdrawing her attention. Every day, she accompanied Mrs. Norton in preparing for the wedding. At the same time, she went to Morgan's room to keep him company and talk. She didn't know what to say either. So every day she just read some mystery novels to Morgan. She wasn't sure if it was her imagination, but she always felt that Morgan really enjoyed listening to her voice. Time flew by. And before they knew it, the wedding day had arrived. Since Morgan couldn't get up, Leona was the only one standing on the stage at the wedding venue. On the way to the wedding venue that day, Mrs. Norton held her hand with a face full of apology. "I'm sorry, Leona, that you have to go on stage alone." Leona just smiled and patted Liam's mom's hand. "It's all right. As long as I can marry Morgan, nothing else matters." While Leona was on her way to the venue, the hospital called. "Hello, is this MS? Leona, your mother attempted suicide by taking sleeping pills last night. She's currently undergoing emergency treatment. Could you please come to the hospital right away?" Leona's fingers gripping the phone suddenly tightened. Although her mother had hurt her deeply, and she hadn't visited her in the hospital even once since that incident happened, yet, upon hearing the news that her mother might die, a heavy, suffocating feeling still spread through her chest. She remained silent for a long moment before saying to the driver, "Could you please take me to the hospital first? I want to check on someone, and then I'll go to the wedding venue." By the time Leona rushed to the hospital in a hurry, as soon as she opened the door to the hospital room, someone tightly covered her nose and mouth, and her mother, who was being treated in the ICU, was looking at her with a sneer on her face. "Leona, I'm doing all this for your own good." A surge of immense resentment and chilling cold instantly pierced her heart. She instinctively struggled to break free, but the strength in her body was rapidly fading, and just before she closed her eyes, she saw clearly the man behind her, tightly covering her nose. It was none other than Liam, the one who had been sent abroad. Morgan forced his eyes open with all his might, all because his young wife, before putting on her wedding dress and heading to the ceremony, had held his hand and asked him with a face full of anticipation, "Can you wake up and go to the wedding with him?" She said she didn't want to stand alone on the stage. She also said that her greatest wish in this life was to walk into the wedding venue hand in hand with him. He felt his heart tremble as his little wife's teardrops fell onto the back of his hand. So even though the force restraining his consciousness caused him excruciating pain, he still struggled with all his might to open his eyes. And just as he was laboriously trying to sit up from the hospital bed, a loud noise came from outside the door. "Hurry, send everyone in the villa out to look for the lady of the house." Morgan's heart tightened abruptly. Instinctively, he hoarsely shouted toward the house, "Come back, has something happened?" The first to hear the noise was the nanny taking care of Morgan. Her eyes widened in terror as she stared at Morgan, whose upper body was dangling off the hospital bed. She immediately shouted, come quickly, the young master is awake, the young master is awake." Within moments, the private medical team rushed into Morgan's room in a hurry. Mrs. Norton arrived half an hour later, looking at her son who had just woken up. She immediately rushed over in tears. Morgan, you're finally awake." But Morgan had no time to share his waking thoughts with his mother. He rasped in a voice like a hairdryer, "Has something happened to Leona?" "I heard the commotion outside the door just now," Mrs. Norton finally came to her senses amidst the joy of her son waking up. Don't worry, I'll handle it, you just focus on recovering. Leona was kidnapped while visiting her mother at the hospital. I've already reported it to the police and sent all the family's bodyguards to search for her. We already have a lead. She was likely tricked by her ex-boyfriend. Morgan's face instantly turned dark and fierce, with Liam being such a coward. How dare he kidnap my wife? I'll go find her myself. When Leona woke up, her limbs were tightly bound in a dilapidated house. Seeing him wake up, Liam immediately rushed over anxiously. Leona, are you okay? I'm sorry for bringing you here this way. You know I can't lose you, so no matter what, I won't let you marry a vegetative person just to spite me. Leona's chest was still filled with the suffocating feeling of oxygen deprivation, listening to Liam's words. She was overcome with such emotion that she burst into violent coughing. It felt as if she might cough up her entire chest. Only then did she glare angrily at Liam. Liam, what exactly do you want? I've told you, I don't love you anymore, do you understand or not? I've already gotten married to Morgan, I'm Morgan's wife now. And you're married to Margaret. Can't you just accept reality? There's been no possibility between us for a long time. Hearing Leona's words, Liam's eyes instantly turned bloodshot. I know you resent me for being a coward, for not daring to defy my parents' wishes to marry you. I've already realized my mistake, why won't you forgive me? And what does having a marriage certificate matter? We're the ones who truly love each other. Leona trembled violently from head to toe, provoked by Liam's obstinacy. She couldn't bear it any longer. Love? What love? Liam, must I spell it out for you? You never loved me from the very beginning. If you truly believed these 7 years together were love, how could you have sent my videos to your rich second-generation friends? How could you humiliate me publicly like that? From start to finish, you've treated me as nothing but a dog, one that kept licking your boots. Now that this dog has run away, suddenly you can't bear to let go. Liam, can't you show me some mercy? All I want is to stand tall as a human being. Leona trembled violently as she spoke these words. Overwhelmed by emotion, what she said was the truth. In her entire life, no one had ever genuinely treated her as a human being. Liam's mom never regarded her as a person, only as a tool for making money. Liam didn't treat her as a person either, only as a toy. Now she had finally found the Norton family who could treat her with equal respect, yet Liam wouldn't even grant her such a humble wish. Did Liam even realize she was now called a runaway bride, if she were absent from this wedding? Not only would Mrs. Norton resent her, but she would resent herself too. After all, the reason she had entered the Norton household was to bring luck to Morgan's recovery. Now that she had run away, how could Morgan ever wake up? Thinking of that man lying on the hospital bed who had never spoken a word to her yet somehow felt like he'd given her the whole world, Leona's chest tightened with bitterness and pain. Her gaze at Liam now seemed laced with venom. Yet Liam remained completely oblivious to the hatred burning in Leona's eyes. Clutching Leona desperately, he pleaded, I know you resent me, but please believe me, once we leave this place, I'll treat you right. I'll spoil you with everything I've got. Leona, I love you so much. Leona paid no heed to Liam's sweet words, speaking with unprecedented fury. Liam, since you're determined to ruin my entire life, then you might as well die. With that, Leona tilted her head and sank her teeth viciously into the side of Liam's neck. Her hatred was utterly genuine. She hated Liam for deceiving her back then. She hated Liam for personally destroying everything she had, so her teeth instantly turned into sharp blades, not only piercing Liam's skin but soon leaving him covered in blood. She even wanted to tear off a chunk of his flesh. Liam didn't resist and let Leona do as she pleased. Go ahead and bite me, if it'll make you forgive me. I'd rather you bite me to death. With that, Liam turned around and covered Leona's face with dense kisses. Instantly, it felt like being crawled over by disgusting snakes. Despair plunged deep into Leona's heart like a dagger. She instantly broke into hysterical sobs and struggles, her teeth gradually loosening their grip on Liam's skin. Liam, I've been with you for 7 years, treated you well for 7 years. I'm not asking for gratitude, just let me go, please. I truly don't want to be with you anymore. Consider this my plea, just let me leave, Leona said while trembling. Tears fell softly all the while. Not only did the tears slide down her cheeks, but their warmth also dripped onto Liam's hand. Feeling the heat spread across his skin, Liam could only shake his head. Ever since that incident at the bar, he regretted it every single moment. If only he hadn't treated Leona that way, maybe she wouldn't have left, maybe she wouldn't have become someone else's bride. Liam's fingers trembled as they brushed against Leona's cheek. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, Leona. It's all my fault for making you so heartbroken. With that, he slapped himself twice across the face. Leona, I swear I'll never treat you like this again. Leona remained silent, tears streaming down her motionless face, for she had already spotted the Norton family's bodyguards behind Liam. An overwhelming joy instantly enveloped her heart. The Norton family hadn't abandoned her. They came to save her. Leona was truly afraid that the Norton family would abandon her. No one could understand someone who had never received the slightest warmth in life, only occasionally tasting a little warmth. She cared so deeply, so terrified of losing it all. And just as she was brimming with joy, the door was violently kicked open. A group of men dressed in black pushed a wheelchair inside, and at the moment that man appeared, Leona's pupils dilated sharply, because the person who came was none other than Morgan. So Morgan woke up. An overwhelming joy instantly enveloped Leona's heart, and she cried out excitedly to the man not far away, Morgan, are you awake? Are you awake? As she spoke, she twisted her body grotesquely and attempted to stand up. But the next second, she found herself physically restrained. Only then did she realize she was currently tied up by Liam. Liam hadn't expected Morgan to actually wake up, and he instinctively trembled slightly, although he hadn't taken over his father's business. He'd heard plenty about Morgan's ruthless tactics in the commercial world, not to mention idle rich kids like them. Even his elite half-brother had to yield ground when facing Morgan. He instinctively wanted to retreat. But when he saw the spark of delight shining in Leona's eyes, every trace of fear instantly melted away. He couldn't possibly give Leona to the man before him. Suppressing the fear in his heart, he immediately said to Morgan, Morgan, I know you're formidable, but Leona is my girlfriend. There's no way I'm handing her over to you. At this moment, Morgan sat in his wheelchair, intently studying his young wife. Just as he expected, she was exactly his type of girl. Especially when she caught sight of him, the girl's eyes sparkled with such delight, so vivid and radiant. It also reminded her of when the girl would read mystery stories to her. At every thrilling moment in the plot, the girl's voice would become exceptionally clear and melodious. There was always a faint, elusive allure to it, but before he could finish examining his delicate little wife, he was interrupted by this man named Liam, who claimed Leona was his girlfriend. No basin could ever be big enough to contain Liam's audacity. Morgan's index finger instinctively tapped the armrest of his wheelchair as he coldly declared, Liam, I advise you to let go of Leona now. You know my methods. While I haven't completely lost my temper yet, you might still manage to remain an ordinary person. If you persist in this delusion, I swear you'll regret today's decision. Liam trembled all over at Morgan's words. But the mere thought of Leona becoming this man's wife sent an indescribable pain piercing through his heart. He truly couldn't bear to lose Leona. Before he could react, a sharp pain exploded in his abdomen, forcing him to release Leona and collapse onto the ground. As he lay there writhing in agony, he realized a bodyguard had emerged from behind him unnoticed, the very one who had just kicked him to the floor. But it lasted only 2 seconds before he suppressed his terror. Especially when he saw Leona being supported by bodyguards as she walked toward Morgan, he trembled like an enraged beast, poised to lunge at Leona. Yet the next moment, he was kicked to the ground again by a bodyguard. He clutched his stomach, his eyes bloodshot with pain as he gazed mournfully at Leona. Leona, are you really leaving? I truly love you. I'm begging you. Please don't leave me. I'm begging you. Leona only glanced back at Liam indifferently and said, Liam, from the day you first mocked me to your friends online, you no longer deserved my love, Leona's love. After speaking, under the dim sunlight, Leona resolutely walked toward Morgan, and Morgan looked at the coldness flickering on Leona's face. He nodded with satisfaction. Looking at Liam, who still wanted to speak, he immediately ordered the bodyguard, break his leg, then throw him to the Yi family. Let the Yi father and son teach him a proper lesson. When Leona heard that Liam was going to have his legs broken, her body instinctively trembled, but within just 2 seconds, she composed herself. Liam had hurt her time and time again. He deserved this fate. Leona never expected she would cause such a huge embarrassment at this very moment. Just as she was walking toward Morgan, Her legs gave way, and she tumbled to the ground. What made her even more flustered was that she ended up bumping her head right between Morgan's legs. There's no social death more mortifying than this. Morgan was also stunned. Damn, is his newlywed little wife this bold? Such intense stimulation right after meeting. He had been lying down for 5 years. As soon as he woke up, he rushed over in a hurry to find someone. Even if his body were forged from steel, he couldn't possibly display his masculine authority so quickly. The key point is, what's going on with this delicate wife? She even rubbed against his leg. Leona Yi was very helpless. Her foot was sprained. Originally, to look good in her wedding dress, she had worn sky-high heels. Now she only felt a piercing pain spreading through her entire foot, so intense that she tried several times to get up but couldn't manage to rise. Just as the two of them were enveloped in a deathly silence, the bodyguard beside her noticed something unusual. "Madam, did you twist your leg?" Leona's face flushed red with pain, but before she could answer the bodyguard's question, her body was suddenly lifted into the air. She was so frightened that she instinctively screamed out loud. By the time she realized what was happening, she was already sitting on Morgan's lap. She braced her arms against the armrests of wheelchair. You can let go of me. I can walk on my own." Morgan was in a pleasant mood at the moment. Just as he had expected, Leona's body was soft and fragrant. Afraid of revealing her inner thoughts, she deliberately put on a stern face and said, "Shut up." Morgan had always been the cold and aloof type. When dealing with outsiders, a dark look from him could radiate an intense aura of chilliness. Leona had never seen Morgan like this and was immediately frightened. Trembling all over, she dared not move recklessly, nor did she dare speak carelessly again. Morgan looked at Leona, whose face had turned deathly pale from fright. A flicker of regret instantly crossed his heart. He had long known that Leona was timid. He shouldn't have frightened her. By the time the two were ushered to the van by the bodyguards, Mrs. Norton had just arrived. "As soon as I got out of the car, I hurried over anxiously. Are you okay? Are you okay?" Leona saw Liam's mom and, like a startled rabbit, quickly jumped off Morgan in a panic. "Mom, I'm fine. Don't worry." Mrs. Norton immediately said anxiously, "I'm not asking if you're okay. I'm asking if that boy named Liam is okay." Morgan snorted coldly and directly cut off his mother's words. "It's nothing, just had his legs broken. That's all." Mrs. Norton immediately let out a long sigh of relief. That's good, that's good." Watching the interaction between the mother and son, Leona was a bit confused. She was just about to ask Mrs. Norton what she meant by that. Mrs. Norton had already taken Leona's hand in hers. "Leona, I'm sorry. It's my fault for not taking better care of you. I promise nothing like this will ever happen again." Leona's eyes instantly reddened. After being kidnapped by Liam and causing such a huge mess, not only did Mrs. Norton not blame her, but she even apologized and came to comfort her. Before she could speak, Morgan's voice sounded from behind again. "What are you still doing here? Aren't we going to the wedding venue?" Leona heard Morgan's gloomy words. Her body trembled violently again in fear. She truly hadn't expected Morgan to be so cold-tempered after waking up, completely different from the man who had been lying in the hospital bed. Mrs. Norton knew all too well about her son's terrible character. She would just let him do as he pleased. When his wife eventually left him, she'd see how he would handle it. By the time the group arrived at the wedding venue, it was already 4 in the afternoon. Leona looked at the crowded hall of guests in disbelief. She thought the wedding had already ended and they were just there to handle the remaining matters. After all, what wedding venue would wait for the bride to be hours late? Unexpectedly, Morgan saw right through what she was thinking. "Don't worry, as long as you, the bride, haven't shown up, this wedding won't end." After saying that, Morgan took the lead and pushed the wheelchair into the venue hall. Watching Morgan's figure, a warm feeling instantly flowed through Leona's heart. The wedding was just as Leona had imagined, beautiful and filled with a sense of happiness. Amidst the waves of applause from below the stage, Leona had never felt so happy in her life, and just as Leona had shed tears of excitement several times, at this moment, Liam was deep in the abyss. Morgan indeed did as he said, only breaking his leg, but he actually had his bodyguard break his ankle, broke his knees, he broke the bone at the root of his thigh. The doctor said he would never have the chance to stand up again in his life, and Liam's father, upon learning that his good-for-nothing son was completely crippled, didn't even bother to visit him. So they arranged for him to be sent abroad, and Liam's mom's biological mother went even further. On the very day Liam was sent away, she adopted another illegitimate child of Mr. Yi, determined to seize old man Yi's fortune. At the same time, Margaret also plunged into the abyss. She had originally incited Liam to kidnap Leona, intending to anger the Norton family and get Leona directly abandoned by them. But that idiot Liam not only got his legs broken but also dragged her into trouble. She had just woken up in her villa abroad when 3 men dragged her to the slums. What kind of place was this? People of all skin colors mixed together, and gunfire incidents erupted every day. On her very first day here, she was violated by a homeless man. The thought of that disgusting touch made her hate Leona to death, and just as she was consumed by extreme rage, Liam was thrown in too. The moment Liam laid eyes on Margaret, he viciously grabbed her by the throat. "You poisonous witch, if it weren't for you, Morgan wouldn't have broken my leg." Margaret had just endured unbearable torment no woman should suffer, and now Liam dared to blame her, with unprecedented hatred. Margaret picked up a stone from the ground and smashed it violently against Liam's head. Liam was knocked unconscious instantly. Meanwhile, Margaret fled in panic and escaped. When Liam regained consciousness the next day, he had completely lost his mind. Margaret didn't come to a good end either. The homeless man was infected with venereal disease, and Margaret became a carrier too. When Morgan received the documents brought back by his secretary, he merely nodded in satisfaction. He particularly enjoyed this kind of revenge, the sort with a hint of bloodshed. What happened with Liam and Margaret? Leona knew nothing about it. She felt anxious every day. Morgan was unbearably cold, wearing a gloomy face daily. The moment Leona entered her room, she dared not speak. Yet Morgan insisted they share quarters every night. Xiao Hubot Anti-Piracy Protection Bookfinding Robot Heavy Checkmark # choose it and you're golden, reliable with no disappointments. He would plant occasional kisses at the corners of her lips. She didn't mind Morgan's intimate advances. But Morgan was truly terrifying. Mrs. Norton seemed to have noticed the source of Leona's anxiety. She stealthily pulled Leona aside to give her some advice. After hearing Mrs. Norton's words, Leona's little face instantly turned bright red. "Mom, does it really work?" "It really works. You have to believe me." That night, when the two returned to their room, Morgan, as cold-faced as ever, said to Leona, "My legs are a bit sore. Give me a massage." Leona's face flushed crimson as she planted a kiss on Morgan's cheek. She whispered softly, "Can you not be so harsh with me? I'm scared." Morgan was kissed by Leona with a rolling warmth. Instantly, his entire body grew hot from the kiss. Suddenly, a smile flickered at the corner of his mouth. "So I need to talk to you with a smile like this?" Leona was stunned, because she had never seen Morgan like this before. When Morgan's face turned cold, it was like stepping into an ice cellar wearing frozen blocks. But now the corners of his lips curled up slightly, making him look a decade younger, especially with those dimples appearing at the edges of his mouth, like an 18-year-old high school student. Leona jumped up in surprise. You look underage when you smile." Hearing Leona's words, Morgan instantly wiped the smile off her face. She gave Leona a pitiful glance before pulling the blanket over her head. Leona seemed to have suddenly understood something. Leona suddenly covered her stomach and burst into laughter. "Are you faking it? You never laugh because when you do, you look younger, which undermines the dignity of the He Corporation's CEO. Right, I guessed right, didn't I?" But before she could excitedly pull back the blanket covering Morgan, her body suddenly staggered and collapsed limply to the floor. Staring at Morgan, who had pinned her to the bed, their noses nearly touching, Leona instinctively swallowed hard. Morgan curled his lips and pleaded in a deep, husky voice, "Darling, shall we consummate our marriage tonight?" Leona was utterly disarmed by Morgan's coquettish tone. It sent shivers down her spine. Blushing crimson but beyond caring about embarrassment, she pressed her lips toward the corner of Morgan's mouth. Morgan shuddered violently, his hand cradling the back of Leona's head as he urgently captured her delicate little tongue. When they woke the next morning, Leona bashfully pulled on her nightgown and made to leave the room. Morgan smiled at her. "Leona, are you planning to have your husband wait naked like this for the nurse to take care of me?" At this thought, Leona's face instantly flushed red again. Because Morgan had been bedridden for 5 years, his legs were still undergoing rehabilitation. So most of last night was her taking the initiative. Leona hung her head, biting her lower lip resentfully. But just as Morgan had said, she went to the wardrobe, took out clothes for Morgan, and prepared to dress him herself. Yet the moment she reached the bedside, her body staggered violently once more. Morgan pressed against her body and hoarsely cooed, "Darling, I've been abstinent for 5 years. How could just a few times last night be enough? Please, love me again, won't you?" Leona couldn't stand Morgan acting this spoiled the most, otherwise, she wouldn't have been coaxed by Morgan into doing so many absurd things last night. But last night, she couldn't escape, now she still couldn't avoid it. Mrs. Norton waited downstairs for breakfast until 9 o'clock. But neither her daughter-in-law nor her son came down. Afraid that something might happen, she immediately wanted to go upstairs to check. The servant quickly grabbed hold of her. "Madam, the young master and his wife are still newlyweds." Mrs. Norton's eyes instantly widened in shock. "You, hurry up and prepare some potent tonic soup for my son. After all, he hasn't sharpened his blade in 5 years. We mustn't let him ruin the edge. And make some nourishing broth for my daughter-in-law too. She's so delicate, who knows how much she'll suffer from that damned son of mine who's been fasting for 5 years." The end.